Good evening. It's the day Boris Johnson promised we'd be leaving the EU, do or die. It's more than 1,200 days since Britain voted to leave, and another extension is in place. Plus, instead of a Brexit Halloween, we're in line for a Christmas general election. We may not be leaving the EU today, but leaving Westminster is the Speaker John Bercow. It's been his last day in the role, and he's also standing down as an MP. He's been MP for Buckingham for 22 years, 10 as Speaker, which means December's election will be the first in a decade where voters have a full choice of candidates. To explain more, we can cross to Catherine da Costa in Buckingham. So, Catherine, no more John Bercow in the big chair in Westminster.
That's right. John Bercow shouted his last trademark order for the last time today. Now, some have questioned his impartiality when it comes to Brexit. There's also been allegations of bullying and harassment by MPs in the Houses of Commons, which he's denied. And in 2015, at the general election, his Buckingham constituency had the highest number of spoiled votes of anywhere in the country. But he's also been praised as a formidable force for defending the role of Parliament and making the House more modern, more accessible and less like a gentleman's club.
Order! Order! Order!
One colleague said to me the other day, "John, you're too young, you don't have the authority to do the job."
Mr. Speaker, you are a wise owl.
Wise owl is the kindest description the honourable gentleman has ever offered of me.
It's my commitment to report to my colleagues, and in particular to the relevant committee of the House, the Procedure Committee, the very large number of spoilt ballot papers and expressions of discontent. There must be zero tolerance of sexual harassment or bullying here at Westminster or elsewhere.
You have been a great servant of this Parliament and of this House of Commons. That you've done more than anyone since Stephen Hawking to stretch time in this particular session.
I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the way that you've used your speakership in the decade-long tenure you've had. You've done so much to reform this House of Commons, and our democracy is the stronger for the way that you've done it.
This has been, let me put it explicitly, the greatest privilege and honour of my professional life, for which I will be eternally grateful.
Well, John Bercow's exit was due to coincide with the day the UK left the EU. That's now been postponed till the end of January, unless Parliament passes a deal earlier. So another delay and more uncertainty for businesses trying to prepare for Brexit. Our reporter Betha Nimmo has spoken to two Oxfordshire companies about what this latest extension means for them.
While politicians have been tying themselves in knots, businesses have been left wondering about the future. Julia makes corsets and sells sewing supplies online from her studio in North Lee. She worries she'll go out of business if there's a no-deal Brexit.
All the small businesses in this country that are dependent on the free trade agreements between ourselves and Europe are going to really, really suffer. And then when we're all out of business and we're looking for jobs, and there's less jobs anyway, there's going to be more people looking for jobs. I just can't imagine the horror of that scenario.
The Federation of Small Businesses says the prolonged period of uncertainty has left small companies like this one in limbo, with investment plans on hold and confidence low. So what can people do?
We're all concerned to make sure that businesses have as much up-to-date information as possible on the latest Brexit news, particularly helping to navigate the complexity of that picture.
But not all businesses are suffering in the uncertainty. Polar Technology makes things like parts for Formula One cars at this factory in Ensham. Those behind the company say it's growing.
I think what Brexit's done for us, and I think for most organisations in the country, is it means you need to sharpen your pencil, you need to really be on top of your game. It gives you the opportunity to go to your customers who are also nervous about the consequences of legislation outside of their control. And you go to those customers, you say, right, what's important to you? How can we help? And we've become a lot closer to our customers as a consequence of Brexit. I just came back from a week's business visit in China last week, and very few of them really know what Brexit is. I don't think it's on their radars at all.
But back at the sewing studio, Julia's had a huge delivery of stock that she ordered in ahead of the former Brexit deadline.
I have to look after my cash flow as well. So literally, it's been very difficult on my bank account.
With a general election coming this December, there could be more political turmoil to come. It means businesses are left wondering when or if Brexit plans will finally be sewn up. Bethan Nimmo, BBC South Today.
So where we have it, some uncertainty for Brexit there, but one thing's for certain, Buckingham will have a new MP. Well, joining me is Phil Harris, who created the petition "Give Us a Vote, Not a Speaker," and I'm joined by the political expert Dr. Matthew Williams from Oxford University. Phil, starting with you, John Bercow's been an MP here for 22 years. You haven't been able to vote for any of the main parties for the last 10 years. This must be long overdue for you.
It's more than 10 years. It's 2005, I think, was the last election. My children are in their 20s, never had a meaningful vote. So it's a case for a celebration in the Buckingham constituency. But still, it's not just that. John Bercow, all the time he was Speaker, he couldn't vote on any issue in Parliament.
Yeah, but what's the chances of any other of the main parties getting a seat here?
Well, it's all up for grabs. At least they'll be able to stand this time.
And Matt, what about the wider region? What do you think there'll be any election surprises?
Well, the Conservatives are quite strong in Oxfordshire and this region more broadly, but there's a very tight race to be had in Oxford West and Abingdon. Layla Moran holds that seat, and less than 1% swing, so 1 in every 100 voters swinging against her would see her lose the seat she won in just 2017. But she's running on a very strong pro-Remain stance in a pro-Remain constituency, so she's looking pretty comfortable. Milton Keynes and Swindon also ones to watch out for.
And do you think this will be a Brexit election fought exclusively on one issue?
I don't think it'll be exclusively fought on Brexit, but pretty much any other policy issue will dial back to Brexit eventually, whether it comes to domestic spending on hospitals and schools or foreign policy. It's all going to come back to Brexit.
Because Brexit's been so divisive, hasn't it? How do you think this is going to go down in the history books?
Well, it's funny, I was thinking about the last time we had an election in December. It was in 1923, which was an election fought on free trade and the position of Ireland in the Union, and 100 years hence we're fighting an election on free trade and the position of Ireland in the Union. So I think in the history books we're going to see that as a country we tend to have arguments about where we fit in the rest of the world.
Thank you both. Well, that's all from me in Buckingham. I can hand you back now to Geraldine with more of today's stories.
Thanks, Catherine. A teenager who was seriously injured when he was knocked down on a zebra